we've been lucky to have you again, you know.
Yes.
We weren't sure when it will happen again, but in a way, so hello to everybody. We're really happy to meet you, Donna, of course, and everybody that joined the meeting, the webinar. This is all new for us, and I ask in advance for your forgiveness because we are new to all this crazy thing of meeting so many people together and meeting someone that is so dear to us and is usually far away, and suddenly we can share a conversation with. The whole session will take more or less an hour, and because we are many people, more than 200 people are supposed to go in. So we will ask from everybody to write down your questions, your comments, your ideas, and to write them, but not right away. Let us a bit go into to feel more the feeling of this, and slowly I will be able to read what you write. Not everything, I suppose, but I will try most of it to Donna. So Donna, we will be able to relate to what you ask. If you want to see Donna in a bigger picture, you have to press the speaker view button, which is on your right up side. If you want to see everybody, you can stay at gallery view, and it's also a nice view, so you can enjoy that. I think that because we are many people, it will be easier to keep the gallery view on, and that will permit you identify Donna more easily between all these little cubes that we became. So, yeah. So, hello, Donna. Donna Orange, our friend, our colleague, for us, family. We are so happy to see you again. And we know, as we spoke before, that the US, as other parts of the world, but US now is really tough, is going through very rough times. And I would like simply to ask you as a friend, how are you? How are you? How is everybody?
Okay. Well, first I want to tell you how very happy it makes me to be with you. I have the gallery view on, so I can see 25 pictures at one time, which is not all of you, but at least I have some feeling of who is listening into us today. I have such good memories of being with you last year at your beautiful new center. I can imagine it very well, and imagine many of you. A group of you took me to East Jerusalem, which was a very, very useful and both upsetting and hope-creating experience for me. The hope is that people in your group care about the people who are in much worse condition right now, especially now with COVID. How we are here is I live in a senior community where the people are in our pretty much 70s, 80s, and 90s. Some are very fragile. And as a result, we are in a severe lockdown. We cannot even go out to buy food. We have to get people to bring food to us. And we can go around walking in the community. But of course, with a lot of distance and the face masks and everything that you know about. The thing is that here we are still having more deaths every day. thousands of deaths every day from this thing. So it is, to use your expression, it's definitely a crisis here still. And I'm very glad to know that it is not as threatening where you are. But of course, we are all in this together. So if it's better for you, it's wonderful. And if it's worse for us, it's not good for you either. We're in it together, aren't we? The problem being, of course, from my point of view, as I'm sure we'll get into a discussion, is that the world's most fragile people, the poor, the old, the minorities, are dying at enormous rates from this thing. And people who are younger and healthier may get sick, but they're more likely to survive, and they get a lot of attention. So, but that's how these things go, isn't it? The social justice orientation of your group in Lud makes it clear that you will understand what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So thank you for being a group that it is possible to speak with in this way. That I really am grateful for. I am doing okay myself. My husband, who had a serious metastatic cancer this past year, is on some drugs that make his immune system weak. And as a result, we have to be extremely careful to protect him. But for myself, so far I'm doing fine, and I'm working, doing things like this and many other things too. But in fact, the self-psychology community, as many of you probably know, has started a set of support groups for therapists who are working through this period. And I'm starting one on Sunday. That actually, I think 18 people signed up for it, and that was too much. I will have 12 or 13, but you can see how much need and desire there is for people to talk about working with their patients. Are often healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and so on, or they are people whose families have lost people already to this crisis. So this is it's completely different from anything that we've lived through in my lifetime, for sure. Yeah, completely different. So it feels very strange to be doing all this talking. I would like to, I want to hear more from you.
So let me thank you first of all for sharing with us. It's very endearing to hear your description of what's going on. And we, of course, send everybody around the world our love and our wish for them to be safe and protected now and always. And
you know what, Claudia, I also want to say to this group that I am so sorry that I speak no Hebrew. That makes me sad. But
that's beautiful. You are always so sensitive about this, and I think that's very unique. And it's really important for us that you say that, because we do the effort. You know, it's not our language.
I know that.
We have to communicate, and the way you speak is always very clear. So thank you very much for that too.
Yes, and thank you for making the effort.
Yes, I know. I want to tell you a little bit about what we've been through concerning the issues of support and help. Mm-hmm. First of all, for me and for us, this opportunity is a kind of closure for this complicated journey we've been through during these almost 2 months of trying to find our way around this crisis, this new situation. Most of the psychotherapeutic community in Israel tried very actively to create lots of different platforms in order to offer some assistance to our colleagues. So my intention behind this meeting was to try and formulate an initial outlook of what we've been through during these months, but most of all to create a space for some overview on transformative aspects of this experience. I mean, what can we learn from this? How can we grow from this? Become better people, become better citizens of this planet, better neighbors in the wide sense of the word, of course. So Donna, this is the reason we all wanted to hear you, your unique voice, everything that you wrote during your career is directly relevant to this crisis. You wrote about crisis, you wrote about trauma, you wrote about the planet, you wrote about solidarity, ethics, transformation. So the first topic I will want you to address has to do with the corona crisis, of course. In your book, Climate Crisis, Psychoanalysis and Radical Ethics, you enunciate a very profound analysis about the deep layers or the deep reasons why humans are endangering our planet.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of this current crisis? Do you see similarities with what you formulated in your book? Do you see other things that can be relevant to our understanding of this specific crisis?
Well, in one way, I already said something about that. But thank you for that question. That's because that's something that my Climate Psychology Alliance colleagues are talking about constantly now, is how are these two things related? One, are they related causally? And most people don't think so. But in terms of their crisis nature and their possibility for transforming human life, that's the big discussion. The climate crisis, of course, is something that is primarily created by our consumption, by our way, our Western way of life that has spread to China and India, but is the whole industrial approach to human life and the dominance, the idea that we can just use whatever we want for whatever we want, has of course created what has been a gradual climate emergency. And just as we were beginning to understand that this is an emergency, that this demands immediate action, we then are faced with the COVID. And the COVID, of course, came on us suddenly. No, it was unpredicted except by a few pandemic experts who said certainly there will be, but most of us had no idea this was coming or that this would change our lives to the extent that it has. So, how does this gradual, climate thing go with the absolute stop that has been put on everything by this virus? It's really interesting to see that the climate problem wasn't bringing us to a stop, and that ultimately it's just as destructive, if not more so, than the COVID problem. But it could not bring us to the stop. It doesn't have the immediacy of of what we are facing and coping with now. Most people, at least even in our crazy country, about 80% of the people realize and affirm that we must stop in order to prevent thousands and thousands and thousands of needless deaths from this COVID. So one of the opportunities that's been created you know, there's an old saying, I think it's Chinese, that there are two meanings to crisis, and one is a horror and one is an opportunity. And I think it's worth thinking about when you talk about transformation. I don't know about transformation, but I think the question for us perhaps is, what is the opportunity that is opening up now?
Yes. Yes.
What are the possibilities? What can we think about now that we were not able to think about? What could we imagine now? You remember John Lennon's old song, Imagine. You know, what would that be? What would it be? So I think it does give us both the time and the necessity to imagine what a better human life, and a better life in harmony with our natural world, not the manipulation of the natural world, but living in and with the natural world. What would that be like? I would say that's one of the biggest opportunities here, is just the imagining alternative realities for ourselves, because we're suddenly in an alternative reality that we never imagined. But as that mitigates a little bit, as we have to hope and believe that it will, at least with the coming of a vaccine, then what kind of world do we want to belong to? What do we want to create? How should it be? And the other way that I think this connects with my work on the climate crisis is the injustice of it. That just like climate emergency, the COVID disadvantages the most vulnerable people. I know that you all know this because you know about Gaza. I mean, I'll just leave it by not saying that. You know that we who can isolate ourselves and stay home are among the privileged ones. We are extremely among the privileged ones. The people who bring us our food are much more vulnerable. The people who have to go into the food stores to bring me food are the people who don't have enough money to say, no, I am staying home. And just like that with climate, the people who have the least, whose lives are the most fragile and threatened already, are much more threatened by the climate change than I am. I can come into my house and turn on the air conditioning, for God's sake. I mean, talk about privilege, to protect myself from the hot weather, which we here in Southern California have where I live is a climate very much like Israel. We are in a semi-desert. You know, it isn't. I grew up in what we called a temperate climate, where there's lots of rain. It's sort of like England, you know. But I live now in a climate that's much like yours. So, but I am among the privileged ones. I have fans in my ceiling. I have air conditioning when it gets really, really hot. And where is that power coming from for that air conditioning? It's probably fossil fuels in most cases. All right, we are doing more wind and solar, thank God. But anyway, I think the two crises are closely connected, but we experience them quite differently because of the suddenness and the gradualness of them. Actually, I have a cartoon in my email somewhere that shows, a battle with the coronavirus, and then there's this huge elephant that says climate emergency. That is 3 times, maybe 6 times bigger than the coronavirus. So the sense of the immediate demand of this, it's sort of like when there's a war or a genocide or something the immediate demand of that makes us, it makes it impossible to think about the large picture. But the large picture doesn't go away. So
No, yes.
Go ahead, Claudia.
No, I think that your words are so important because you help us. And I think this is the thing that I found during these times so difficult to do. How to stay open, how to open up constantly again and again towards really the other's suffering, because suffering is this time, there is a lot of suffering around the world. As you say, a lot of underprivileged areas that we don't know even what they are going through, okay? They don't even have a fair media that can tell us what's going on there. And other places where we do know, and it's really, really hard. And you know, I found myself, and I talk about it here also in one of the lectures I gave, this inner voice that tells me not to shut down, not to close myself. It's really easy when you're around danger, and danger now is just meeting a friend, okay? We are not talking about missiles, we're talking about the very simple everyday life things that we are used to do, and they suddenly became dangerous. And that this is a big stressor on our minds. And as Doris Brothers said in her chapter of the book you publish all together, The Ethical Turn in Psychoanalysis, we tend to dichotomize, to become very close in our certainties, to put the other certainties far away. We don't want to mix our certainties with the other uncertainties, okay? And for me, the big, the major challenge was to stay open, to give my heart this wide open stance of keeping sensitive to what's going on, to suffering around me. So yes. Even what you said now, it's for me, I felt this movement inside me that I'm opening up towards the boy that brought me food today. That's exactly what we need. We need to hear that voice all the time.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Claudia. That's really leads me where we maybe should need to go. And that is, how do we protect ourselves from being overwhelmed by the magnitude, the enormity of the problems, all the way from the danger of meeting a friend, the danger of doing things that seem so ordinary to us. I don't like to say normal, that's a loaded word, but the things of ordinary everyday life have become dangerous. And that can, as you say, create self-centered, self-protectiveness in me that makes me not have any, what we call in technical language, bandwidth for the other, for the other's suffering. And so this is something that, as you're saying, we kind of have to work at in this time, how we remain open and not closed down into ourselves and into our own self-protectiveness. Those of you who have had any look at the work of Emmanuel Levinas know that he defines the ethical as having to do with non-indifference. And even those of us who have given our lives to the care of others, as all of you, I imagine that you're mostly all therapists, as have done, we have we have tried in every way to orient ourselves toward the other, toward receiving and accompanying the other in their feelings and their suffering and in their struggles and even in their defenses. How do we, cope with what seems like an enormous anonymous attack on our own security or on our own, to think of Doris's work, certainties, that not theoretical certainties, I believe X, Y, and Z, but rather the kind of certainty that allows us just to walk down the street, that just to go to sleep at night. We need a certain amount of that, of sense of security, of a feeling that, yes, there will be a tomorrow, to go to sleep at night, don't we? And how do we protect ourselves enough that we can go on doing our work, go on doing our lives, and not kind of shatter into 1,000 pieces, to use Kohut's language of fragmentation? There's and to notice the new kinds of fragmenting that are going on around us, or that we may be doing, suffering ourselves. I think the study of fragmentation would be very interesting right now. But in any case, how do we do that and keep ourselves, as you are saying, or I'm paraphrasing what you said, non-indifferent, open to the pain of others when it just seems too much, too much, and not to close down. I think in the scriptures they talk about hardness of heart. How do we not harden our hearts? That's how I think about ethical self-protectiveness sometimes. And so I'm curious to know if you think of any particular examples or particular areas of that, what it is that you're trying to remain open to. If I could talk with all of you, I would, and ask you what you're thinking. Hey, I just saw you, Gabby. Hello. How nice. Every now and then I get some new pictures of people. Then there are a number of you that I know, and if I don't greet you, please forgive me. This whole situation is a little overwhelming, as you might imagine. Claudia, what are you thinking now?
Yeah, I'm thinking that what you were leading us to, for me, is like it's the moment where the question of how to be be a self-object in our lingo, but in a more general way, how to be this person, this ethical person. Now it's so difficult because of what you were saying. We are being also threatened. The most difficult moment of trying to be for the other is the moment that you are threatened by the other, okay? That's the biggest challenge maybe in this area.
Yes.
So
yes,
that's that is what I was thinking of. On the other hand, I was very troubled by the fact that this epidemic, this pandemic, made a lot of people died alone. A lot of people died without anybody that they know. Mm-hmm. That was very, very, very sad for me.
Yes, and it continues. That continues.
It continues every day for thousands, and I think that's a big pain that we are going to feel for a long time, I think. Yes. Because I know how I feel after I could be for my parents, this hand, this eyes, these hugs, and how that comforts me afterwards. And when I think of all the hundreds of thousands of people that will feel so much pain for so long, because it's really a big hole. It's a big hole in your heart.
Indeed. It's a big hole in your heart, and it gives you the sense of having completely lost the ethical connection. The nurses and doctors in our country are constantly telling stories about people dying alone in their hospital wards, unable to have any real contact with their families. It's a reminder for us, I think, of how many people in the whole world are dying alone all the time, and we don't know about them, as you said. And it reminds me again of the definitions that Emmanuel Levinas gave us. He said, the face of the other commands me. And what does it say? You shall not murder me. You shall not allow me to die alone. This is the ethical command. Now, how in this moment do we do that? I think your reference to self-object experience is incredibly important. That is what we need. And it is the loss of that Heinz Kohut believed was the worst loss we could suffer. And the absence of that to begin with is so developmentally deformative, if you will. So all of us are trying to find ways to for ourselves to find what Kohut would have called self-object experience, and to provide it for each other. That's probably how we keep our hearts open, to use the feeling that we are able to provide for another something of that is sort of relieving to say, oh, not everything that I have always believed in is completely gone. Even if it is that I must call an old and lonely colleague on the telephone, or a relative on the telephone, or that yesterday I set up an hour's conversation with Anna Ornstein, who is known to most of you, I think. And she had a stroke last year. And as many of you may know, and she said, I was not talking for 5 months. And she says, and I always talk. Those of you who know her would know that. She has at least partially recovered, and we had a wonderful conversation. But talking about self-object experience, she wanted to tell me the story, as she told in January on the NPR radio program, of the day that she entered Auschwitz in 1944, in June of 1944, I think it was, and that her mother would not let go of her hand. And I think, and she said, we felt that we would survive together or not at all. And she was forced to let go of her father's hand because they were taking old people, and he had his mother's hand, to the selection. She never saw him again, or any of the rest of the family. But her sense that the self-object experience with her mother, of her mother, has carried her through her whole life is remarkable. I'm going to send Claudia a link to the radio interview with Anna, because I think it tells a lot about her Auschwitz experience, and I think it will be very meaningful to you. Of course. She is our grandmother in, well, she's I think 16 years older than me, so she's one of my psychoanalytic teachers and mothers, and she would be grandmother to many of you, or mother. We're all in the debt of the older colleagues, and just hope that we will have them a little bit longer. They're astonishing what they have given and left us. I find myself tremendously grateful in this time. There's another opportunity. I have been, as some spiritual people say, practicing gratitude. And I've been trying to think about who are the people in my life that have given me so much. And Anna's one of those people for me. Absolutely. And I think that gratitude makes us more want to provide similar gifts to the next person, and to the next generation. There's something about that. The opportunities, I think, for our own personal and spiritual and ethical growth in this moment are really large. That's one of, I wouldn't call it a silver lining, because there's no silver lining to the way people are dying and suffering in this time. But the opportunity for us, and I hope that all of you will remain healthy, by the way, is definitely there. So I will send the link to Anna's interview.
Yes. Thank you, Donna. And we are very grateful to you too for the way you are reminding us to this tenderness, this openness, this gratitude is very, 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 very important for us too. It leads me to the topic I wanted to talk about, and it's transformation. You said before that you don't really know what it means or what I meant. For me, the way I quote so the idea of transformation is very good. I like the way he saw it. I think it has huge potential to keep exploring and understanding more and more. In a few words, he referred to this inner transition from a more primitive or archaic narcissism towards a self that is willing to go beyond its own individuality in order to participate generously in the human world around him, the human world, the animal world, everything that is part of this world, of course. Transformative processes bring along a more empathic, a more compassionate, a more meaningful life. That's the idea, in my view. Overall, we can talk about this inner capacity to move from ourselves towards others, to recognize others' needs, to recognize our fellow men's suffering. And you wrote a lot about the ethical stance, about the fact that the other comes first, as Levina says. So I wanted to ask about what is your view or your understanding of the concept of transformation. I saw you use this word in your writings.
Yeah.
Maybe you can agree with code, of course. I will be glad. I think that the idea of code is really strong, and it has a lot of different layers on it. But I would like to hear your concept of it, and of course your philosophical background can enrich this idea maybe.
I'm sure. Thank you. That's great. That will help me start. You're a wonderful conversation person. I am sure that any concept of transformation that I have or have used is heavily indebted to Kogan. There's no question about that. I have studied the same texts that you have, and unfortunately didn't know him personally. I have the very great pleasure of being a close friend with his son, and that has been a wonderful transformation for me, if you will. But in any case, that transformation can take us from a self-absorbed, fragile narcissism into a more robust sense of self that is able to take the risks of community. You know, my friend Chris Yannicka writes about the risk of relatedness. And the therapist or analyst who is willing to risk a profound kind of relatedness has also, in the process, been developing a more robust sense of self. Otherwise, it would shatter us. But it also strikes me that a form of transformation that may be a little bit available to us in this moment. I mean, I know you're trying to get us to think about what is this moment? What is it? It has to do with vulnerability. Our own vulnerability, our own fragility. You know, Heinz Kohut taught us to stop thinking about those nasty narcissists and start thinking about we fragile narcissists. You know, that narcissism is a form of fragility and vulnerability, that as much transformation as all of us have tried to engage in over the course of our lifetimes and our therapies and our therapeutic work and all of that, we are still very vulnerable. And this moment with the COVID reminds us that every one of us may carry it, may transmit it, may die from it, that nobody is exempt, nobody is safe. There is a kind of vulnerability that we all share at this moment that we can either hide from and deny and, you know, hunker down and just take care of me, or we can embrace it open-heartedly, as many of the medical workers are doing, with all their fears, and they tell how afraid they are, especially afraid of taking the virus home to their families. They are saying, but this is my job. This is what I do. This is what I do. The vulnerability is simply something that one takes on. And the embrace of vulnerability, we often don't think of as an aspect of the robust self-experience that we, you know, the stronger, more centered self-experience. But I think it is. You know, some of you probably read Camus' The Plague. I reread it at the beginning of this pandemic. And it's really very interesting. He's not preachy at all. In fact, the preacher in this book is a Jesuit that's telling people they brought it on themselves. It's your own damn fault after all. But the main character, the doctor who goes around, spends long days in the hospitals and in people's homes taking care of them and making sure that they don't die alone, and so on, and it goes on and on and on. Somebody finally asks him, "You don't believe in God. Why are you doing this?" And he said, "It's my job." That's his simple answer. It's my task. It's my job. It's what I have to do. Now, what he knows he's vulnerable. He knows he could catch this. His closest friends and his wife die during the book. But his ethic is very simple. People are suffering. I do my job. That's all. That, I think, is somewhat transformative. And one does not return to ordinary, everyday life unchanged by that. When we respond, knowing how vulnerable we are to the vulnerability of the other, whether it's psychological vulnerability, which we all cope with every single day in our work, or whether it's physical vulnerability or whether it's climate vulnerability. And so much that we don't know. Thank you, Doris Brothers. So much that we don't know. That's a transformation, I think. We have in the West, and I imagine that many of you have had wonderful educations at learning to know stuff. You know, what do you go to school for? To learn stuff. Learn science, learn math, learn literature, learn history, learn psychology, learn stuff. What we're having to do is embrace the vulnerability of not knowing. Not knowing whether we're going to live or die, whether those we love are going to live or die, whether what we're doing is really helping people or not, but just doing our job. Just going one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. I think that's a huge transformation. For me, Claudia, I have always, since I was a very small child, lived in the future. My family situation was horrible. And just to put it briefly, I'm the oldest of 10 children, and I consider myself one of Ferenczi's little wise babies. But I was always looking forward to either escaping from the present situation that I was in, or creating something new that would put something solid into my hands or under my feet. And suddenly in this moment, that's gone. There is no future. At least the way we feel it here. Many people say the same thing. I can't plan for anything. I don't know whether next week I will be able to go out of my house, or whether next year I will be able to come and see you in Israel. You know, probably not, actually. And the learning to live with not knowing. I mean, I always was a fallibilist. I was always somebody who said, don't be too sure. You don't know everything. Have a little humility here. I've always, you've heard this from me, I'm sure. But now I'm saying, I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know anything. And in the face of that, I listen to Camus' hero, who says, just do your job. And you try to figure out every day, what is your job? And you do it. And then tomorrow, it may be a little different, or it may be the same thing, and you do it again. And so that's a little bit transformative to live like that, I think. What are you thinking, Claudia?
I think yes, I'm thinking that you're showing us a path that has to do with accepting in a soft way, in a light way, as you say, as you do with your hands, a light way, our vulnerability. And we owe this also to Lou Aaron, who wrote about it, and he made a lot around the fact that people, and because they cannot accept their vulnerability, they become aggressors, they become violent. Yeah? My feeling is that vulnerability is the path towards softness, towards tenderness, towards love. It might be one of the paths. I don't think it's the only one.
No.
But you can become very aggressive, you can become violent. But if you accept this place, if you can be at peace with being vulnerable, you can grow a lot of love inside you. I think it has to do with it.
Well, I think it has to do with the question of violence too. Because if you say something cruel to me, I can do, there are many things I can do in return. I can say to you, Claudia, that hurts. Did you mean to hurt me? That's living in the vulnerability. Or I can just hit you back and say something equally or more cruel to you. That's violence. So embracing vulnerability is also a way of reducing violence, I think. I think it's a big one. The other thing, though, is that when we're vulnerable, we need help from each other. This is where we come back to the self-object experience and back to the therapeutic community, where if we are vulnerable psychoanalysts, for example, we don't try to do all of this by ourselves. We ask for help from each other, and we can, listen to the other's vulnerability and get them to listen to ours. That's why I think peer support groups are going crazy right now. They're filling up like everything. We need each other. And especially in our country, invulnerability is the cultural idea. It's masculine, it's strong, it's I don't need anybody and I can do everything. And death, that's for other people. We just say, oh, he passed on. We don't even say that people died. We don't like vulnerability. We really don't. But I think
yes, I think you are right. And our politics also are showing and are enhancing in a very pathological way this stance of invulnerability and masculinity together.
Absolutely.
And it takes me to the next thing that I wanted to ask about, and it's the last page of your chapter in the book, The Ethical Turn in Psychoanalysis, where you recommend, you say after a very big exposition of how you understand the way ethics is not masochism, you leave a half a page or one page at the end where you say that when you go into your practice, you practice two things. One is kindness to yourself and to your patients. The other one is the restoration of their dignity. I'm not sure that the word restoration is right, but their dignity is very central to what you do. And then you say that if something is even more difficult, you go to your clinical humility. I really like that expression, and I don't think I saw it anywhere else. So can you comment on that? Because it's like we have this big burden of being ethical people, to do our utmost to be there for the other, and then you leave us this space for also being attentive to what we need, to the way we should be, to secure, to keep ourselves also in a kind way, etc. So if you can comment on that, thank you.
Well, kindness, I'll start with the first one. Kindness is a word that you rarely see in the psychoanalytic literature. It's considered too ordinary, too simple, and too unpsychoanalytic. So I'm taking a stand here in favor of what I might call a humanistic psychoanalysis. And the people that I wrote about in The Suffering Stranger, Ferenczi, Freda from Reichman, Winnicott, Kohut, Bernard Brandschaft, I could have chosen others, but these are examples of people whose kindness was profound, and they didn't make a theory out of it. It's just the way they worked. And I'm just naming that as one of the conditions. Somebody, yes. I'm getting some responses that I can see. I've apologized to the 175 of you that I cannot see. I can only see 25 people on my screen. The kindness is a way of being with the other. It isn't condescending, but it does allow the other to go through the door first. allow the other's feeling to be important, and for the moment, perhaps more important than mine, although not always so. And so kindness. What was the second one I talked about there that you mentioned?
Dignity.
No, that's the third one.
No, the third one was...
Oh, the restoration of dignity. Okay, I want to say something about that because that's not always obvious, that most of our patients come to us in a humiliated and ashamed and feeling degraded and feeling that they are less than human. Not all, but often this is covered up, as Kogan would have taught us, with a grandiose self, which is a huge defense, isn't it, against these kinds of feelings of subhumanity. The reason I think this is, if not universal, extremely important, is that I believe that every human being is born with both the capacity for what Kogan described as a sense of self, but also as meriting that, meriting the recognition, the response to that. And there are people who've essentially never had it, never had a sense of their own dignity, never been treated as if they were worthy human beings. But there are also people who have been so egregiously and extensively mistreated, either in childhood or in adulthood or both, that our work, especially the work with the severely traumatized, is a work of restoration of a dignity that we didn't really even know was there. And the person who comes to us so destroyed doesn't know was there. Leonard Shengold was a great inspiration to me with his work on soul murder. He believed that there was a soul there to be murdered, and that some families were systematic soul murderers. And I think his concept really helped me clinically to understand the extent of the harm that can happen to people. Jean Amery wrote about what happens to your soul the first time you are tortured. You know, there is destruction. And it is as if people bring these little fragments of a soul. And some of them are angry, some of them are super depressed and despairing, and some of them are just totally confused and resentful and all of other things. They bring these fragments of their soul and place them in our hands. And it's our job working with them to try to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. But Humpty Dumpty didn't just fall off the wall. The old nursery rhyme says, you know, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. But that's what we try to do. And we know they didn't just fall off the wall in most cases. They were pushed. And that's the thing that makes it so difficult. Because the trust in human relationships gets destroyed preemptively, you know, so early and so completely. Amery said that he never gained trust in other human beings again, and he ultimately committed suicide. And there are others. There are others. And, you know, we had a super emergency room doctor commit suicide in New York here last week. She apparently had just lost trust in the human capacity to care. And in one way or another, she was completely overwhelmed. So that's the other thing. If our work, when we say do your job, this is what we have to do in this moment, do your job. But our job is tremendous. It's restoration of dignity, restoration of the tiniest shred of belief in humanness. So, but the thing is that we fail. We fail either because of our own limitations, the extent of the damage, that you know, people will say to their therapists, I don't think you know the extent of the damage that has been done to me. I don't think you get it. We try to get it and to stay with the other, but we fail for all kinds of different reasons. And this keeps us clinically humble. I think this concept of clinical humility needs to be our constant companion in our work. And it really needs to be our constant companion now in the face of the COVID crisis and the climate emergency. Yeah. I'm sorry that I can't actually have a conversation with all of you. It is good to see your faces, though.
If you want, you can just go around and see everybody. It's really beautiful to see the faces of the
How
friends.
can I make myself have more faces? I have already 25.
No, you can push the button. There is
an
arrow.
I see it.
There is an arrow, and you can see everybody
Now
smiling.
Now
People are smiling to you, or really happy.
Well, I am smiling to you too, and thank you for smiling to me. It is really lovely to see you.
We are getting into the end of our meeting. There is someone that wants to write some words to Donna. Otherwise, I think I can say for everybody that this was so lovely. This was so inspiring.
I hope it was something that you needed, you know, something that works for you. I had no idea what we were going to do today. I did not prepare for this because I didn't know what it was going to be, but your faces helped me.
We can say, as Gadamer suggests, that we don't conduct a conversation, we fall into a conversation, we create together a conversation, and I think that's what happened. It became a new thing that we couldn't know ahead how it will be. But I think that it was really a pleasure, and I think that I see the faces of all our friends smiling, and I think it touched our hearts. We felt this hug, this very secure and non-COVID hug, where we know that we are together and we have our friends, and this is a big community. And we thank you so much, Donna, for being with us. And there is Mira Orovitz. She wants to say thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mira.
Mira, and Ruth. Thank you, dear Donna. You have touched my heart.
I want to send you all a big hug and a huge shalom.
Thank you, Donna. And Bella also say thank you. And I thank everybody for being with us. And a lot of love and hugs for you, Donna. Keep safe. We love you. We want to see you here soon. And we wish for that. We hope for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. Be safe.
Bye-bye.